So, who wants an NFL professional opinion on Caleb Williams?
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC your first listen every day, whether you're watching the show on YouTube or wherever you want to download your podcast. Never forget the show is free, and always remember how much I appreciate your support. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers, join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. So today's episode, I got a special guest for everybody. We're going to bring him on up here. Max Chadwick, college football analyst with Pro Football Focus, as also he's the co-host of Preferred Walk On. Max, welcome to the show.
Mark, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, thanks. Not a problem. Max is here to discuss, among other things, USC football, but we're going to focus on the NFL draft. First and foremost, Caleb Williams and why he believes Caleb should be the number one overall selection in the 24 NFL draft. So again, Max, welcome. Why is Caleb going to be, or should he be, the overall number one NFL draft selection?
Yeah, honestly, I think Caleb Williams is pretty clear cut to me, the number one quarterback in this year's draft, and the Chicago Bears hold that first overall pick. And one can argue that they could use another quarterback. Now, Justin Fields has looked pretty solid in his career, but I mean, I don't know if you want to bet on him long term. And the issue with betting on Justin Fields long term versus taking a guy like Caleb Williams is that you're gonna have to pay Justin Fields, and you're gonna have to pay Justin Fields probably $40 million a year, if not more. I mean, he's probably gonna want that Daniel Jones contract, if not more than that. And to me, I wouldn't do that if I'm the Bears, if I can get a guy like Caleb Williams for $4 million a year for a few years on the rookie quarterback contract. So I think Caleb Williams, like I said, I think he's a clear top guy in this draft. I've really loved his tape for 3 years now. He's been phenomenal. And I think he's one of the better quarterback prospects that we've seen, probably only behind guys like Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck, maybe Joe Burrow, but I don't even know about that. I think Caleb Williams is a pretty special quarterback prospect and one that is more than worthy of being selected with the first overall pick.
Okay, so aside from the financial side of the equation here, which I find really interesting that was the first point you brought up, because I don't know if Justin Fields is worth $40 million to any NFL franchise, but that's a whole nother discussion. So if we were to focus on, the NFL, the general managers, the scouts, organizations, they go through their NFL prospects with a fine-tooth comb. We know what Caleb can do well. I mean, he shows that he can make plays and do whatever he needs to do to extend a play. What are his weaknesses, and what's going to get highlighted when he gets to the NFL?
I think the biggest weakness that showed up at times this year was that he tends to play hero ball a little bit too much. And it happened a little bit this year. I think the Notre Dame game was a pretty good example of that. There are times, this is kind of a double-edged sword with Caleb Williams, and that his ability to extend plays, his ability to hold on to that football, make magic happen, create throws from any platform. I mean, it's why the Mahomes comparisons I don't think are that ridiculous, because it does kind of the same kind of throws that Mahomes is able to do, and very few quarterbacks ever have been able to do. And Caleb Williams has that arm dexterity, arm talent to make literally every throw. I know kind of saying a guy can make any throw on the field has kind of been an overrated thing, or an overused thing, I should say. Caleb Williams can actually make every throw on the field. But again, the weakness with that is that he can get a little overconfident at times. And I don't want to say he was playing hero ball just because he thought, he could do it. I also think there's a little bit to it where he thinks, hey, I know my defense is going to give up 50 points. I'm going to have to go out there and literally be the hero for this team. So I think a little bit of that played into it, where he knew that he had to win the game basically on his own. But I think once you get to the NFL, you can't do that anymore. And he's got to get rid of the football quicker. He holds onto the football for one of the longest average time to throws in college football over the last couple of years. He's got to get the processing has to go a little bit quicker too. He passes up open receivers sometimes, trying to look for the bigger play. So instead of swinging for a home run every play, he should take the singles and doubles when he can find them. So I think that's the biggest the quote unquote weakness. But luckily for him, that's a coachable thing, and that's something he could easily fix at the NFL level. It's just it might take some time for him to fully fix that weakness that he has got right now.
Was there any concern or maybe any feeling that he was trying to do maybe too much in 2023 compared to his Heisman season, when even after that season when he won, he said, look, I want to do better, at least statistically, which is like, wow, okay. But did he maybe put too much pressure on himself this season?
I think he might have. I was very fortunate enough to talk to him one-on-one for about 20 minutes last year, or actually right around this time last year. It was at the NFL Combine where I talked to him on Zoom, and terrific guy. I highly recommend checking out the video if you guys can. I prefer to Walk On channel, like you mentioned before. Really awesome interview, honestly. But yeah, he mentioned a lot about how there's so much pressure that he put on himself. He kept saying how, hey, I need to make a college football playoff, and obviously it didn't happen this year, unfortunately for him. But he puts a lot of pressure on himself, and he knows that he's the guy. He knows that, hey, if we're gonna do everything that we want to do as a team, it's gonna be because of me largely. So yeah, I do think there's a little bit to that where I honestly might have been deserved. Honestly, I mean, we saw USC struggles. I don't think USC as a team was all as good as they were in Caleb's Heisman season. So Caleb put even more pressure on himself, where his Heisman year, he felt like he was playing free. He had Jordan Addison to throw to. But in this past year, he didn't really have any of those guys. And it looked like he was putting more pressure on himself to even live up to what he did as a sophomore, honestly. And don't get me wrong, he was still phenomenal. It wasn't like, I mean, everyone keeps talking about his down year. I really don't think it was that much of a down year at all. I still think he was one of the best quarterbacks in the country. But you did start to see a little bit of the hero ball pop up a little bit more with Caleb Williams.
Absolutely. And you're actually preaching to the choir when it comes to those aspects that you're talking about. Again, we're here with Max Chadwick from Pro Football Focus. He's giving us his expert analysis on Caleb Williams. So we talked about what Caleb does well, what some things he might struggle with when he gets to the NFL. What will he be able to do right away? Let's say he's had the starter in Chicago or wherever he ends up. What's he going to be able to do right away? And people are just going to go, wow, that's why he's the number one overall draft pick.
Yeah, I think the arm talent is going to translate immediately. I think you're going to look at him and be like, wow, he's going to make. He did it on Saturdays too, so it shouldn't be too much of a, like he made NFL throw. He made throws that most NFL quarterbacks cannot make while he was a sophomore, even a freshman at Oklahoma. He made some throws that are like, whoa, like that's insane. I remember that the one Texas throw where he kind of was running up and then made an off-platform throw of like 50 yards downfield right into the corner of the end zone. It was a perfect throw to, I think, Marvin Mims, actually. That's what he can do. And I think he'll have those moments where your jaw drops, honestly. Like he is going to have just Mahomesian plays that you almost never see before. I think he's got that aspect. I think he's also a pretty good runner. I think he's smart about when he is a runner. He can, he's a very good escape artist. He's going to break out of sacks at a good level. I think that's what he's going to bring to the table immediately. He's going to make jaw-dropping plays. I think pretty much day one he gets to the NFL.
And then two more questions on Caleb before we move on. And you kind of touched on a little bit, but are there any concerns about Caleb's mental side of the game, maybe being too emotionally invested? And I'm going to take this even a step further, maybe aloof. He talked about, how he handles, losses, and, he would, want to cuddle up with his dog under the blankets, those types of things. And maybe there's a little bit of sarcasm involved there in the heat of the moment. But is there any of that type of concern that, Caleb's a great leader, but there's times where he still needs to mature a little bit?
I don't think there are. And I don't know the guy too much outside of the one, 20-minute conversation I had with him. I think they're just different leaders in every aspect of life. Honestly, you're going to find, different ways that guys lead, and he's an honest guy. That's really the biggest takeaway I had, is that he didn't really give me the political answers, the ones that, that are pretty much taught to them by media people saying, hey, if they ask you this, he gives you honest answers. And I think all the stuff about issues off the field, which quite literally there are no issues off the field. So I think those are crazy when people bring those up. I think it's overblown. I really think it's overblown. And I think a lot of stories, I mean, even heck, for my interview with him, there were quotes made up from my interview that he said, that quote unquote he said. And I actually, I came at the accounts and I was like, hey, take these down. These are fake quotes. And they're like,
Right.
well, how do you know it's fake? And I go, well, it says via Max Chadwick on the bottom, and I'm Max Chadwick. So I know for a fact he didn't say that. So I think that there's a part of that too, where people just maybe don't like the kid that much and they make up stuff about him. So like, I think the whole Chicago, he wants ownership of the team. I don't know if that was real at all. There's a lot of stuff I think that's made up about him. He's an emotional guy, man. And obviously, the crying to his mom. Right. I mean, listen, I think that's good. It shows you how much he cares. And, it was funny to me that people think, oh, he doesn't care at all. And then all of a sudden he is crying in the stands and they go, oh, wow, now he's crying. He cares too much. It's like, it's insane. The goalpost movement that's been done for Caleb Williams. So no, I don't have any concerns really, at least that I've seen so far from him. I think he's a different guy for sure. He definitely is a different guy that you've seen. But I still think, I mean, his teammates seem to love him. The coaches seem to love him. So I still think he's a guy that, everyone's going to want to play for. And I still think he's a guy that's worth investing in as your face of the franchise.
Absolutely. Could not agree anymore. And then last question, as far as how this affects USC, how important is it for recruits to know that USC is still an NFL football factory? They've kind of slipped away from that moniker in the last, 5 to 10 years. So how important is it to, hey, you know what? Caleb's that number 1 overall draft pick. USC leads the nation in having the most overall number 1 draft picks. How can they build off of that?
I think it's the Lincoln Riley effect, where it's just, you look at, I mean, literally when I talked to Caleb and I said, hey, why you want to play for Lincoln Riley? And he goes, look at his track record. Like, Baker Mayfield, Heisman Trophy winner, number 1 overall pick. Kyler Murray, Heisman Trophy winner, number 1 overall pick. Coach Jalen Hurts up for a year, Heisman runner-up, NFL draft pick, now leading the Eagles, led the Eagles to the Super Bowl last year. Caleb Williams, Heisman Trophy winner, going to be the number 1 overall pick. If I'm a quarterback, if I'm a 5-star quarterback, there's no other coach in the country I'm looking at and saying, oh, I want to play for him more than Lincoln Riley. His track record, and that's quite literally, when Caleb told me, that's quite literally the reason why he chose to play for him, was because of his track record. And I think this just adds to that track record. You're going to have another NFL starter coached by Lincoln Riley. And honestly, you could have another one in Spencer Rattler, who's coached by Lincoln Riley for a couple of years. There's a chance he might get a shot to be an NFL starter as well. So I think that is the biggest thing with this. It's just another NFL starter that you're going to have. I mean, you have Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Caleb Williams, Jalen Hurts. That's 4 right there. I mean, you can make it up an entire division in the NFL of just Lincoln Riley starting quarterbacks from the last 7 years, which is crazy. And you've seen it right now. I mean, Julian Lewis, one of the top quarterbacks in 2025, is committed to USC. And I can bet you the biggest reason for that is because of Lincoln Riley. And he's seen what he's done with Caleb Williams. He's seen what he's done at Oklahoma. I think that I think is going to help out a lot for future top quarterback recruits. They're going to see this and say, hey, I want to go play for that guy. And it's why Lincoln Riley seems to be getting a 5-star quarterback pretty much every year now. I know Malachi Nelson just transferred out, but I'm sure that was the reason why he went to USC in the first place. I think that's the biggest thing that'll just keep on helping Lincoln Riley, is that quarterbacks will see that and say, hey, I want to go play for that guy because I want to win a Heisman Trophy and I want to be a number 1 overall pick in the NFL.
Are you listening, Julian Juju Lewis? No wavering, so committed. All right, we're going to come back here with Max, and we're going to talk about some USC players on the offensive side of the ball and where they might end up in the NFL draft. So we're going to come back with that here in just a second. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with. They've got same quick bets, same game day parlays, and exclusive prop bets, plus a whole lot more. So just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and shoot your shot. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NBA. On the show, you get a lot of in-depth analysis, as we're showing you here right now, and hot takes. Well, let me give you my hottest take of the day. The best lineup in LA right now is the lineup of auto loans at Logix. They start off at the top with one of my favorites, the proven and dependable new and used vehicle loans. You can count on these guys to give you the low rates and save you big time bucks. Next up, they've got an exciting new rookie sensation. It's in their electric vehicle loans team with super low rates and flexible payment terms. You're going to want to check these guys out. And then rounding out their lineup, they've got the auto refinancing loans and lease buyout loans. With these dudes, you're going to get your lower monthly payments and get on the road to owning your car faster. Look, I know it's a hot take, but seriously, no one can beat the lineup at Logix. Visit your local Logix branch right here in LA and the surrounding area and let one of their amazing team members help you, or just apply online in minutes at logixbanking.com. That's LOGIX banking.com. All right, you got that all out of the way. So, Max, let's talk about USC's offense. Obviously, Caleb Williams has been the face of the program for the last couple of years, but USC actually has 8 guys who have been invited to the NFL Combine, and they'll have a bunch more performing at their pro day later this spring. So, who are some of the guys on the offensive side of the ball that the NFL is really going to be excited about in this draft?
Yeah, I think outside of the obviously Caleb Williams, I think you got a few skill position guys that I think NFL teams will like a lot. And it starts with the son of the greatest receiver to ever live, Jerry Rice, and Brendan Rice, who, he's got good size, 6'3". I'm not going to compare him to his father at all, but he actually had some impressive reps at the Senior Bowl. He had a really impressive final season at USC. I think there's a chance that he goes in the 3rd round of this draft, which I think will be good for him. And then another guy I like a lot, who I thought was one of the most underrated players in college football this past year, is Marshawn Lloyd, the running back. He was a tackle-breaking machine for USC, and honestly, probably didn't get as many carries as he might have deserved in that backfield. So
thank you.
I honestly, I think there are some games that USC might have lost just by putting too much on Caleb Williams' plate. They probably should have given some more carries to kind of alleviate some of that pressure to Marshawn Lloyd. So I love Marshawn Lloyd. He might be a 4th round pick in the draft. You know, the raw numbers won't jump out at you, but that was just because of lack of volume. When he did get the ball, he was extremely efficient and one of the best tackle breakers in college football this past season. And then I think the other one, another really underrated player I loved, is Taj Washington, the other receiver who was kind of the go-to guy this year for Caleb Williams. He's the number 1 guy. When a lot of other people thought that other guys would step up and be the number 1 guy, it ended up being Taj Washington. And he's going to be a good slot receiver in the NFL. And I think both he and Marshawn Lloyd will probably be taken probably in that 4th round range. And I think Brendan Rice might be a 3rd rounder. So, outside of Caleb Williams, I think those are 3 skill position guys that I think will probably be drafted for USC this year.
Yeah, I'm really high on Taj Washington. Brendan Rice, enough said. He's got the whole pedigree, and when he gets to the NFL Combine, he's just gonna open eyes. I mean, he's just that genetic freak. Taj Washington, though, I mean, he might not have the same size as like what's the receiver from the Rams that just blew everybody away?
Puka Nacua. Yeah,
Puka Nacua. Thank you. But he's got that same type of drive, that same type of just throwing the ball, and he's going to make a play for you. Mm-hmm. And what Taj Washington did in 2023 was really amazing. So, USC is, look, they're known as an NFL factory at multiple positions, but lately they are wide receiver U. I mean, you can just go through the years, and 2 years ago, Drake London. It's just, they keep producing. So Brendan Rice and Taj Washington are just going to be a couple more that they're going to add to their lineage. You mentioned Marshawn Lloyd. Let me ask you this question. What about Jarrett Kingston, the offensive lineman? Did he get, did 2023 hurt his NFL draft stock? A lot of people, including myself, felt he was being played out of position for much of the season.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I think Jarrett Kingston was a guy that obviously a lot of people were excited about joining them from Washington State, and played mostly at guard this past season. And he played well as a pass protector, at a 77.7 pass blocking grade. Wasn't as good as a run blocker, but I think he's another guy. Again, he's not on PFF's big board right now, but I think he's a guy that, if he doesn't get drafted, could be a priority undrafted free agent and get a look in training camp for sure. So, I think that's an interesting question of whether or not he was played out of position. And I think he's a really talented pass blocker. Probably can get a little bit better in the run game. But I think Jarrett Kingston is a guy that might get a look. Like I said, after, if he doesn't get drafted, he could get a look as one of the top undrafted free agents probably.
And then same question, not as it applies to Jarrett Kingston, but as a player like a Justin Dedich, does he have a chance to make an NFL roster as a draft pick, or is he going to go in as an undrafted free agent?
Yeah, I think Justin Dietrich is another guy. I think USC's offensive line has kind of really been underrated over the last couple of years. And Dietrich played phenomenally last year and was great the year before. Took a step back this year, especially in pass blocking. Like, he was one of the best pass protecting interior offensive linemen in 2022. Took a step back this past season. He actually was a great run blocker in 2021. Again, wasn't that great this year. So he kind of had a down year. I wouldn't expect him to get drafted. But I was really impressed by his tape from the 2 seasons before this one. And I think, again, like Jared Kingston, he probably could get a look as a priority undrafted free agent.
And then real quick, in the next couple of drafts, and the obvious, you got the Zachariah Branches that are coming down the pipeline, but who do you see on USC's roster right now that NFL executives are going to be really excited about maybe not in the next 2 drafts?
Interesting. That's a good question. I will say, first of all, Zachariah Branch is definitely one of them. He's an electric playmaker who has like Jalen Waddle-esque tools, honestly. I don't know how much people will be excited by him as an NFL prospect, but I know I love him as a college tackle, and that's Jonah Monheim. He has been phenomenal for USC over the last couple of years. I couldn't believe he actually went back to school. He's a guy that I think is a really, really good tackle, probably one of the top 5 offensive tackles in college football, I would say right now. So him, Bear Alexander, I think will have a lot of fans in the NFL draft community. I was a little underwhelmed this past season, I'm not going to lie, but I do think he'll have some guys, a lot of people that really like him for his tools and what he brings. I think he can get a little meaner, I think, and he could be a really talented player if he does that. But yeah, I think those are some of the guys that I would look at right now for USC and say, okay, in the next couple drafts, those are the guys I would probably be circling on my list right now as guys to watch out for.
Absolutely. And on Bear Alexander, we're gonna talk more about the defense here in the next segment. So hang on tight for one more segment. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from the seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time has easy to find and buy tickets because the app shows you views from all the seats in every venue with the lowest price guarantee, and they even have an event cancellation protection policy. That's pretty cool. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Right now, all Game Time users can use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Max. USC and defense these last few years, they've been synonymous with each other, right? It's been the strength of the team. Yeah, everybody hears the sarcasm. So who should we talk about? Again, we've been talking about the NFL Combine that's coming up. You've got players that have been invited. Which NFL roster should take a chance on, like a Kalen Bullock? You've got Solomon Byrd that's out there, I think, really under the radar. Christian Wallace. Talk about those guys and anybody else you want to touch on.
Yeah, I think Kalen Bullock is the first one. I think he's going to be the highest. He probably will be it depends on how Brendan Rice performs in the combine, because I think you're right. You could have a really good combine and move up boards. But Kalen Bullock probably will be the highest drafted USC player after Caleb Williams. Again, he's a terrific coverage player. I had a little bit of a down year this past year, but terrific in coverage, can really move well, and is a true center fielder at free safety. And I think he could be a really talented player at the next level. The issue with him is run defense, and has always been physicality, and whether or not he can be, whether or not he'll be a liability in the run game at the next level. Which, I mean, if what he's shown in college, he might honestly be in the NFL level. And real quick, a couple other guys I wanted to shout out as to next couple drafts. I totally forgot about Kamari Ramsey, the transfer from from UCLA, the safety. I really like him, and then the other one I want to shout out was Achille Arnold, the Oregon State safety that's transferring. And I like both of them a lot. So they will replace Kalen Bullock in that safety room. I think those are two really talented players. But yeah, I think right now, Kalen Bullock, again, the coverage is outstanding. He has the tools that you want. It's just he's got to get meaner in the run game. He's got to learn how to tackle a lot better right now because it was a big issue in college. And if it's a big issue in college, it's going to be even a bigger one at the NFL level. And the other one, Solomon Byrd, I think is another great shot by you. He's a underrated player. I think Christian Rowland-Wallace, again, another really underrated player in USC secondary. Eric Gentry is probably the other one I would shout out, the linebacker. I think he's a solid player, had a good year this past year. Huge linebacker at 6'6". Got to put on some weight, though. He's only 215 pounds, so he looks a little bit like a safety out there, or a really tall safety, honestly. But he's another guy that I think NFL team probably might take a shot on late day 3, if not be one of the top undrafted free agents. But he's another guy that I know some people are at least intrigued by with him.
Well, let me ask you a question. Would you be intrigued enough with Kalen Bullock? Number one, do you think he could slide into the first round? Obviously, towards the tail end. But because of his lack of physicality, would you maybe think about moving him over to cornerback?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. You could at least think about it. I don't know if I would do that. But I think, I think first, to answer your first question, I do not think he'll get in the first round. I think there's a chance. I don't think there's any safety that is even close to being a first round pick in this year's draft. I think Tyler Nubin from Minnesota is pretty solid, but I'd be shocked if he got in the first round. But Kalen Bullock, I think, is a guy that you'll see go in the late second round, maybe early third round. I think that's kind of the range for him. But yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I haven't really thought about the transition for him at corner. I don't know if that would be the smartest thing for him. I think it's just something he's got to get better at in as a run defender. But yeah, I think it's a true free safety. I mean, he has really shown some really impressive reps on tape and coverage. And I probably wouldn't move him to corner, but I do think it's an interesting question because like you said, the physicality with him is a huge issue right now.
No, absolutely, without a doubt. It's been his biggest thing. And he knows it. He tries to add weight, but some people just can't add weight. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So Max, again, I want to thank you for coming on. This has been a really fun show for me. We don't do a lot of guests here, but when we do, we make sure that they're important people. So thank you. Hopefully we can have you on again in the future. Maybe we'll see, how this conversation went after the draft. We can, look at it then and say, hey, you know what? We were right about that. We were wrong.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me on, Mark. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And again, I hope to have you back on again soon. So with that, we'll talk to you. Everybody, Locked On USC, part of the Locked On Network. We come at you 5 times a week. That's the end of this show. It's the end of this week. I will be back again next week with another 5 episodes. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.